All right, welcome to our bill hearing. We have a lot of bills to get through today, so we're going to get right started. I see that we have Delegate Kaufman with us, House Bill 98. Welcome, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I begin my remarks, I want to thank Ms. Smith personally for all that she did to ensure that this is an inclusive hearing and to ensure that everyone had their voice heard. So thank you, Ms. Smith. Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, for the record, my name is Delegate Aaron Kaufman, representing District 18, Montgomery County, otherwise known in my district as the person not Jared or Emily. I am introducing HB 98, the Deaf Blind Co-Navigation Services Program Bill, which would secure funding and establish a program to train persons to be co-navigators to assist the 32,000 deaf blind residents of Maryland. My friend Senator Mary Washington is the Senate cross-file. And that figure comes, the 32,000 comes from the Maryland Association of the Deaf. This bill is very important. I've had numerous conversations with advocates of the bill, including representatives from the Maryland Association of the Deaf, the Governor's Office of Hard of Hearing, which is supporting the bill, and the National Federation for the Blind, which also supports the bill, as well as residents who are also deaf and blind. These organizations have come forward in support of the bill, including Mayor Brennan Scott of Baltimore, the Baltimore Jewish Council, the renowned Kennedy Krieger Institute, the esteemed Maryland Catholic Conference, and many others who are also in support of this bill and have provided testimony for this hearing. Persons who are deaf and blind want to live independent lives. This is possible with the assistance of trained and qualified co-navigators. People who are deaf and blind cannot see and they cannot hear. They cannot see blinking signals or hear audio to let them know that they can cross the street. They cannot hear the train bells or see the arms coming down at an intersection to alert them that a train is coming. An advocate who will speak later, Blaze, almost got hit by a train or was hit by a train and miraculously is okay. But because he could not see or hear the train, I'll let him tell his story. Deaf-blind individuals have a great deal of difficulties navigating their way through doctors' offices, buildings, because they cannot see or hear. A co-navigator is necessary to help a person arrive to their appointment and get to the correct doctor. People who are deaf and blind cannot read a prescription or communicate with a pharmacist unless they have someone with them who can help them. Colleagues, this is dangerous because they could take the wrong medication or take the wrong dosage. This issue can lead to worse health outcomes or even death if you take the wrong prescription. Persons who are deaf and blind tell me they feel very isolated and alone, and that has a negative impact on their mental health. They are very reliant on family and friends to help them, but family and friends also have their own responsibilities to tend to. In my conversations with members of the deaf-blind community, people have shared with me that they feel very isolated, and the isolation is extremely difficult on them. Co-navigators can help individuals lead more independent lives. Co-navigators will assist persons in completing basic but vital tasks, such as going to the doctor's office, reading prescription labels, going to the grocery store. Again, these are basic tasks, but if you cannot see and you cannot hear, it's rather nightmarish. And escorting persons through bus or train station or airports. Maryland is not yet a leader on this issue, Mr. Chair. Washington State has had a co-navigation legislation since 1979. Minnesota since 1980, Florida since 2004, and California has followed suit since then. And several other states have been looking into this possibility of a similar program. It's time for Maryland to join them. As a person with a disability, I know we want to live as independent lives as possible. The primary goal of the Americans with Disabilities Act is to give people with disabilities the support they need to be part of the fabric of the community. This bill would further that aim and would grant members of the deafblind community with greater independence and a greater sense of dignity. Having a co-trained navigator will reduce a person's reliance on family and friends to help them get places, which I know from personal experience can lead to friction. I just want to briefly touch on the fiscal note. I know it's high, colleagues, and I didn't get a chance to engage with the fiscal note writer because I got it at like 4 o'clock yesterday. But the way I look at it is we either pay for it on the front end or we pay for it when a deafblind individual who's on Medicaid is in the hospital for a week or two because they took the wrong medication. And if you look at the governor's office of deaf and hard of hearing testimony, they say the situation is dire, and I could not agree more. And frankly, understanding the fiscal situation, if you look at the bill, I put in there that the state has to seek other sources of funding for the program to lessen the burden on the state. Finally, I want to just thank my friends, Delegate Heinbaugh and Griffith, for signing on to this legislation, because supporting people with disabilities and giving them the supports they need to flourish and add to the tax base and become employed should not be partisan. So I appreciate that Delegate Heinbaugh and Delegate Griffith signed on. Thank you so much for your time. I urge a favorable report on House Bill 98 and have a wonderful day. I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you so much for the bill. Any questions for the bill sponsor? Delegate McComas, push your button if you, there you go, and then they'll turn you on. Okay.
Delegate Kaufman, how many people are both deaf and blind that this bill is really trying to address? I assume it's just not dealing with one disability or the other. It's the two to combine.
It's the two together, and that's why I'm very proud that in addition to the governor's office of the deaf and hard of hearing, the National Federation for the Blind is in support of this. So you have a kumbaya moment among the disability community, which, to be honest, doesn't always happen. But in terms of your question about the total number of deaf and blind, I think if you look at your laptop, Delegate McComas, my friends at the Maryland Catholic Conference say that there are 2.47 million individuals who are deaf and blind in this country, and the majority of them are 65 or older. And then my friends at the Maryland Association of the Deaf, as I stated at the outset of my testimony, tell me that there are 32,000 deafblind individuals. But for example, I think that in the state, something like 17.3% of students are students receiving special education services in one form or another, which tells me that another set of deafblind individuals are coming down the pike because those kids grow up.
Okay, thank you.
The bill sponsor. Okay, we do have some virtual witnesses, so we'll let staff go ahead and pull up our virtual witnesses one at a time. Whoever's here first, you can. Okay, Andre, I think is first.
Should I leave?
Okay, we have Andre Pellerin. We need a camera. If you can ask the interpreters to just translate that if Andre can turn on his camera. Okay, and if you're connected to the audio, then that's fine. We will accept your testimony in that form. So Andre, I think we have you. Andre, welcome.
Oh, I should go ahead and say something. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. The committee here, and let me tell you, my name is Andre Pellerin, and I'm from Kalmar Manor in Maryland. So I am a deafblind individual. I do have Usher's syndrome. Usher's syndrome is a condition that causes degradation of my peripheral vision or my eyesight. So my eyesight will decline over time. Doesn't mean, so I will be less independent, and I have a partner here who will be going to college soon, and I really won't be able to depend on my partner after that. And so I support this this bill, co-navigator bill, seeing a co-navigator will help me to continue on being independent, and it will help me to be able to go shopping or be able to go to maybe the galleries, maybe go to an art gallery on my own. I am an artist by trade. A co-navigator will help me also see what the environment is like for me. And that is something I really do miss. And I don't want to miss that because I don't see very well. I see a very fuzzy field of vision. So a co-navigator will be able to provide me that information externally, and I'll be able to go to the doctors with a co-navigator. They can also explain what is going on in the room. Maybe with the doctor, I could just, as it stands, I would just stand there and not really know what's going on. So that person would fill me in. So today, so that's what I would like to explain, is that I'm really hoping that with this passage of this bill, it'll be helpful, because by passing this bill, we will be, it will provide a greater improvement for us deafblind individuals. I want to say thank you for allowing me the time to testify today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your testimony, and thank you so much for being with us. It's important that we hear from you. Any questions for this witness? Okay, thank you so much for being with us, Andre. Have a great day. We have Janice Toothman. Welcome. Thank you. Can the interpreter just let Janice Toothman know to start her video and that she is on? Okay, we're gonna allow Janice to have a couple minutes to get her video on and do that, but let's go to our next virtual witness, and then we can get back to Janice when she is ready. Heather Guy or Ann Black? Okay, we're not labeled, so we'll just have whoever the next we have in our waiting room, we'll just let them come on in. If either of you are Heather Guy or Ann Black, go ahead and turn your cameras on and we'll welcome you.
This is Janice Toothman.
Janice, we can't see you, but we were happy to welcome you through audio. So welcome. If you can see our interpreter, you're welcome to present your testimony if we can do that, or well, if you can get
on. I'm sorry, this is Janice Toothman speaking. I missed the earlier situation comments. So what
Janice,
do you
you're
want
fine.
me to do?
We'll take your testimony. You can go ahead. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. This is Janice Toothman. I am a member of the National Federation of the Blind, and I am a leader of the deaf-blind division at the state and national level. And as a leader, I have worked to empower the deaf-blind to become more independent and resilient and to work towards employment and decreasing their sense of isolation and feelings of lack of connection with the community and society. And especially with the pandemic, this has been especially acute. And with this bill, which I am in favor of, the co-navigators will help ensure that deafblind individuals and those with hearing loss will help be able to connect with others. They can go and learn about visual sensory information in the areas in which they want to go, whether it's religious services, social activities, or to the grocery store, as well as, the communication preferences that they have, they can receive pro-tactile or other kinds of information such as laughter or other kinds of questions that are often expressed non-verbally or not in spoken words and stuff, which often make us feel more isolated. And so the co-navigators are such an integral part of feeling more connected to our environment and to others in the family and friends. So that is why I'm supporting this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Janice, thanks for your testimony. We appreciate you being with us today. Are there any questions for Ms. Toothman? All right. Thank you so much for being with us. Our next witness, either Heather Guy or Ann Black. They're not labeled in our waiting room, so we'll just pull up whoever's next, Jewel, in the waiting room, and we'll see if it's Heather or Ann. Great. Okay, well, welcome. I guess I see Abby. So welcome, and how are you? And welcome. We'll take your testimony.
Okay. Hello, Chair and Vice Chair of Education, Environment, and Energy. My name is Ann C. Black. I live in Rockville, Maryland for 28 years. I am going to ask my facilitator to communicate to voice my testimony.
I would like to take the opportunity to discuss HB 98 and SB 185 bill, which is very important to the deafblind community. I am deafblind from Usher syndrome, which is an ongoing visual and hearing loss. Communication and mobility are the biggest barriers that affect my life. Recently, I lost my last stage vision and now I can't see anything. People, American Sign Language, anything in my environment. While going through adjustments, I felt isolated without a co-navigator, which is badly needed for daily life. Deafblind people depend on various modes of communication, depending on their levels of vision loss and hearing loss. No two deafblind people are alike. CNs require special training to work with deafblind people. As you can see, a CN is very important service for deafblind individuals in order to be active in the community and enhance our lives. CNs are trained to give deafblind people environmental information to help us function confidently, comfortably in the community so we can stay actively involved. Thank you for allowing me to testify. Your consideration of us who are deafblind is greatly appreciated, and we hope you will pass this special bill.
And thank you so much for your testimony and taking the time to be with us. We certainly appreciate it. Any questions? Okay, once again, thank you so much for being with us. Have a great day. We'll turn to our last virtual witness. Okay, welcome.
Just testing this microphone. Thank you.
Hear you. Hey, welcome. We can see you and you can begin your testimony. The camera's good. John Reski.
Hello, my name is John Reski. I live in Rockville, Maryland. I am deaf-blind with low vision. I was not able to send in my written testimony. But I wanted to share that it's really difficult in the community communicating with hearing people in the community, whether it's drivers, or any type of person in the public that you might interact with. It's very difficult. After I was no longer able to drive for myself, due to my vision loss, I'm stuck with these drivers that I'm unable to communicate with. I can no longer drive at night. At my hometown in Michigan, which is where I lived back in 1996, I had a similar experience. Then after my father passed, moved to Wisconsin, and in Wisconsin, it was the first time that I had experiences with deaf-blind services. However, there were still many frustrations in communicating with bus drivers, not being able to read the bus and see, the running of where we're going and what location we're stopping at, and then not being able to communicate with drivers is extremely frustrating. There were times that I would get on a bus and find out I've gone 20 minutes in the wrong direction and have to figure out how to navigate my way back to ensure that I could ride the bus in the right direction. And I knew at that time, I lived in Milwaukee for 24 years. These frustrations over that span of time slowly got better, but it still was not easy. I've met many other deaf-blind people who share the same experiences. That the world is not built to fit with us. And that is why the world is built for those who can hear and for those who can see. And so there are many barriers out in the world for me. I face barriers every day. So after facing those frustrations with the bus, I applied for a special van service and still did not have an easy time communicating. And that brings us to today. where I've learned over time, and after I was no longer able to drive for myself and lost some of that independence. I've learned in meeting these drivers, they don't know how to communicate with me and we have a difficult time. However, for my friends who know how I communicate, they know me well. Even if they maybe can't understand everything, we at least are able to communicate. But often when I would ask my friends for help with a ride, for a visit to my doctor, to my audiologist, or to a social event, they would be unavailable and busy. And so that is why this bill is so critical. And for co-navigators to help, and for deaf drivers, for signing drivers to work with deaf-blind people and give them rides so that we don't miss the pivotal information and we don't have to piecemeal everything together. For example, if I dropped something when I was in a car and I can't see in the periphery, I kind of have tunnel vision. And so I have to look very closely and for a long time until I can find something, compared to someone who is hearing and sighted, who may be able to just find it very quickly. And so often it's very hard work for deaf-blind people, even just to do something as simple as finding a pencil that you dropped on the floor. And so having a co-navigator is critical in that sense also to support. I would have to sometimes wait for my wife to come home to help me find what I had dropped on the floor. And so the communication access is really critical. And I could give many more examples for the way the world is built for sighted and hearing people. But that is why I'm really happy to share my testimony today. That is why I'm here to help support the deafblind community and this co-navigator bill for the great state of Maryland. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for your important testimony and being with us today, taking time out of your day. Are there any questions for this witness? Okay, have a great day, sir. Thank you again for being with us. Appreciate you. I think that concludes the virtual witnesses. So we'll turn to witnesses we do have here. Edwin Martinez, and just come on up. I'm going to call in groups of 4, and then whoever gets to the desk first can just begin your testimony as you're able. Edwin Martinez, Shane Dundas. Just 2 people at a time. Edwin Martinez and Shane Dundas. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eddie Martinez. I am a deafblind individual, and I have been deafblind since I was born. I have relied on co-navigators for a very long time, and specifically, it's because of various opportunities that various barriers that I have come across. For example, I need a co-navigator to go with me to go to the grocery store. I need one to go to the bank and to help with transportation, to recreational events with families or friends, to go hiking and various activities like that. I also would like to add, there is a high number of deafblind individuals that live in the state of Maryland, and it is a huge need to have this co-navigation services. So I really want to emphasize that for this bill, that if it is passed, it will help open a lot of doors for deaf, blind individuals. Their worlds will become open to have equal access like everyone else. They're not going to be less than. We are going to have the same amount of access. So in order to have, we need to have co-navigators with us and to access that. I am in support of this bill. For this bill to become law, and so that it will give the opportunity for deaf, blind individuals and give them a sense of freedom, independence, equality, and reduce the isolation. The challenges that we have come across thus far will be reduced if we have a co-navigator with us. If I don't have a co-navigator, I would not be able to go anywhere. I would be nobody. I would not be able to function. And that is why this co-navigation bill is here. Thank you for your time.
Money. Shane at the table. Okay, are there any questions for Eddie Martinez? And Shane.
Hello, my name is Shane. Greetings to Chair and Vice Chair, and to the committee. Thank you for having me here. This is truly a historic moment. The word co-navigation was first actually mentioned in this building on these grounds in Annapolis, the capital of Maryland. And so it's wonderful to be back here. I am a 3-time trained professional co-navigator. And in my role, I become the eyes of a deafblind person. For example, I am working with Eddie as his co-navigator. And when we came into this beautiful building, he does not see what we see. I'm able to give him the information of the facade and the beautiful elements of this building. And I become Eddie's shadow. Deaf-blind people can do anything except nothing with a co-navigator. So we're able to share with them the environmental factors, to go with them to the grocery store and doctor's appointments. The deaf-blind community is hungry to escape isolation, to get out of the house, to be part of the community, to make meaningful contributions to make the great state of Maryland a better state. They have every capability. They just need a set of eyes, which I am Eddie's eyes today and for the foreseeable future. And I also act as his shadow. It's so critical to have this bill in order to provide co-navigators. Thank you for your time today.
Thank
And
you.
please, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thanks to you both for your testimony. Any questions for this panel? Okay, thank you so much for being with us. Have a great day. Ursula DeBerry and Sari.
And I also would like
Wish.
to just thank Senator Kaufman for his support. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Sari's my aide, Mr. Chair. She's not testifying.
Okay. Ursula DeBerry and Blaze Delahouse. Welcome.
Hello and good afternoon, Chair and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Ursula DeBerry. I have a long history providing support service providers services to the deaf-blind community. It is an honor to be here today on behalf of the Governor's Office for Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I am the acting director, and I'm here to provide testimony to support the co-navigation bill. This proposed bill would create a co-navigation service program within the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing for deafblind individuals in Maryland to support their visual and environmental services and to assist with communication and accessibility. The support in Maryland, this is really important support for the deafblind community. So we often receive requests that deal with the deafblind community. And this service would be assigned to the co-navigation services. But in order to establish this, we would need additional resources, such as grants, to create a position that's required. So you can see in this room, we have several deafblind individuals here in person, and some are on Zoom. They are searching for equality. I have been told by various community members that they have not had time to assist, or it is just too time consuming. Additionally, there is a mother of a deafblind witness who will be providing their testimony. Deafblind lives do impact their loved ones, and they feel a heavy burden. This bill is a Consumer Protection Act to empower deafblind individuals to give them access to their environmental information. Not just here, but also have the ability to contribute to the community as a whole. And this is a must-needed bill. This is, a huge issue for accessibility for deafblind individuals. We're Marylanders, right? Have you guys heard this hearing before? If you go and exercise right, you go shopping, you make money, you do your job, and you travel and you vote, they would be able to do that too. So deafblind individuals will be able to contribute to their local economies with that guidance and support from their co-navigator and they will be able to make their own choices. I recently worked with a deafblind individual, transporting them to a training course, which was related to how to use a cane. During that appointment, it was really important for me to share what was going on in the environment, such as what was previously mentioned. Facial expressions, the size of the streets, different information to keep them safe. The layout of the room, who's sitting at the table, simple things like that we take for granted, but that's information that they need to know. And they would get that information through a co-navigator. Social cues to the T, explaining their personal feelings and reactions. Some use the haptics on their back. I remember during that visit, that deafblind individual just wanted to go and find their friends. So I had to explain who everyone was so that they were able to identify them and make that connection. And that was through touch. The Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing has continued to advocate for communication access for 1.2 million deaf and hard of hearing Marylanders. That includes the deafblind community. And that doesn't include people who are, younger, who are youth. We have a lot of people in the state of Maryland. My predecessor, former Director Kelby Brick, was a strong advocate for our community. His work resulted in Maryland's rank among the top states to provide ASL interpreters on broadcast TV during the pandemic. This is one example of the power of ending the injustice and embracing inclusion. But it doesn't stop there. We will continue the legacy of improving the lives of our deafblind community. After all, Governor Wes Moore has already shared, we are leaving no one behind. So please support passing this bill to help increase independence for deafblind individuals and empower them to contribute to society.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Okay, thank you so much for being with us today. Have a great day. Bruce Denhart and Eleanor Brown, please come on up.
Can you repeat those names?
Yes, I'm sorry. Bruce Denhart and Eleanor Brown. Welcome.
Hello and good afternoon. Oh, yes, it is afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here to testify. I'm Eleanor Brown, and I live in Germantown, which is in Montgomery County. So I am deafblind, and my mother, who is behind me, is also deafblind. My vision is mild in comparison, but I am starting to lose my vision. So I am concerned for my future. I know that I'm going to need a co-navigator. So I want this bill to be passed so that my mom can have a co-navigator, because it is hard for me to constantly support my mother. I have kids, and my daughter is becoming an adult, but I've been having to take care of raising my children as well as taking care of my mother. So I'm here to support the bill because this will have a huge impact on many people in the deafblind community. Everyone else, friends, family, and community members will be helped by this program as well, so that the deafblind members can get that assistance for their daily activities. And they're able to do things they want to do. For example, if they want to go hiking, you need somebody there to help navigate. Say, hey, there's a rock over there, or there are rocks up above. So all of that information is a necessity, and so that we can enjoy our lives and go hiking. But having a co-navigator with us is important to enjoy our experience. Going to various places, if we need somebody with us when we're driving so that they are able to sign in ASL. If we have a hearing driver, it is hard for us to communicate with them, which is very frustrating. So we need somebody who is able to drive for us and able to give us that information in ASL. They would bring us to appointments and identify things in the environment. If we go to a grocery store, they can let us know where the specific food is, and we can get what we need from the shelves. Co-navigators will also help increase the ability for deafblind individuals to do things on their own. It's mostly about safety, which is very important. Like with their medication and things like that, it's important for them to be safe. So this program needs to be established in the state of Maryland. It is a need for all counties. Doesn't matter what age, this is important for all deafblind individuals. And this program will help hire the co-navigators, provide the training for them, and also make sure that deafblind individuals know how to use the co-navigators. I've been struggling for years, especially with COVID. My mom became very isolated and stayed at home. She couldn't go out. She couldn't go out walking because she was by herself. She needed somebody with her, but that made things very challenging for us. So thank you for allowing me to testify, and I ask everyone to support this bill. Thank you.
Okay, our next witness, I think, was Bruce.
Hello, Chair and Vice Chair. My name is Bruce Denhart. I am deaf and I have low vision. I live in College Park, Maryland. And I also am the acting president of the Metro Washington Association for the Deafblind, as well as on the board for Deaf Blind Camp of Maryland. I am in favor of and support the co-navigator bill because then I don't have to worry about missing information, like things that I can't see in the distance. I always have to ask someone, hey, what's down there? Or even if I'm just looking for the grocery store on the street, or if I'm at the grocery store and looking for a loaf of bread or a specific brand, I have to ask someone to point me in the right direction, for someone who has better eyes than I do. It's the same thing with going to even a fast food restaurant. It can be hard to see the menu up on the marquee. And sometimes I need to use my iPhone, take a picture, and then be able to zoom in to see the menu from there. And so I would rather have someone with me to help me with those things. It's the same thing with life. For example, live interpreters on stage. When I go to see a show, I can't see the interpreter that's on the stage. They're too far away. And so having a co-navigator to support that is something that I need. Without a co-navigator, I have a really hard time finding someone to just come and volunteer to go with me to all of these different places in the community. If the co-navigator bill passes, then we will have someone ready to come with me to be involved in the community. And now it depends on whether or not I'm lucky enough to find someone to volunteer if I can go out into the community. That's why I'm in support of the co-navigator bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your testimony today. Any questions from the committee? All right. Thank you, sir, again for being with us. We certainly appreciate it. Have a great day. All right, Sarah Nellinson and Meredith DeSoma. Come on up.
Oh.
Okay, welcome.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I am a deafblind person. And I have been for many years. I am a very independent person. I've traveled the world. I am known as what I believe they call a globetrotter, and I really enjoy my freedom. However, the older I've gotten, my vision has started to decline. And I realized that when I got to the airport, I was easily finding myself lost, not being able to see my gate number, not being able to hear announcements for a last minute gate change, or if something happened and you had to deboard the plane. So I started noticing these little communication issues, the same thing with a large train station, for example, in New York City. It started to become impossible for me to navigate my way around large and complex structures for transportation. The use of a co-navigator would greatly benefit not only me, but also for other deafblind folks who enjoy traveling. Sorry about that. I have a guide dog and I am a guide dog handler. Regardless of whether or not I have my guide dog with me, I would still need to use a co-navigator. Because of the information sharing, and really it's just very basic, it's in the name, in order to help us navigate the environment and what's going on around us. Co-navigators are able to see and to relay messages to us. They're able to share any updates that may be happening with the weather or flight schedules or anything that's going on in the environment real time. I am so hopeful that this bill will pass, and thank you for allowing me to testify. Thank you. Hello, Chair and Vice Chair. Thank you for your time for allowing me to testify. My name is Meredith DeSoma, and I have worked closely with the deafblind community, specifically in the last 2 years, or a little over 2 years. It has been quite the learning experience for me to witness the situations that they go through. For example, when I went to a deafblind social event for the first time in Rockville, Maryland, there was construction going on one side of the sidewalk that blocked where we were trying to go for the event. And as a deafblind person, I had no one to support me. And that's what, excuse one moment for clarification for the interpreter. Excuse the interpreter. I am a sighted deaf person. And when I saw the construction in the road, I started to realize that would be a huge barrier to my deaf-blind friends. And I realized that I should become a co-navigator. However, unfortunately, soon after that, I realized that would require me to give up my money, my time, and gas to do a tremendous amount of work for a very small amount of pay or for nothing, which essentially forced me to limit my investment in supporting the deafblind community and individuals who need the critical service of a co-navigator. In my eyes and in my heart, it is unfair and it is not equitable to those deafblind folks who do not receive the independence and the opportunities, and they are not able to do the daily tasks outside of their home without a co-navigator. I think it's time for the state of Maryland to recognize the deafblind community and that they need this service. Thank you for your time and for hearing my testimony. Please support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you both for your testimony today, being with us. Any questions? Okay, thanks again. Have a great day. Thanks for your testimony. Jason Corning and Ariana Wynn Carver, I think. Jason Corning and Ariana Wynn Carver. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Jason, and I live in Anne Arundel County. I wanted to thank you to the chair, vice chair, and the committee for giving me the opportunity to come and share my testimony today. I've lived in Maryland for 14 years. I work for the federal government. I'm also a college professor at Towson University. I've realized being involved in work and also in social events, I often need to ask friends, family, and even pay acquaintances to help me travel and to get around. However, also many of my friends are deaf who are sometimes on a limited income. And so specifically, I'm fortunate because I have income, but for those who are on limited income, who are not able to work, they are not able to pay out of their pocket for the services that I was able to pay for. So I'm here today because I'm setting up 2 businesses and I'm very involved in the community. And so I find myself yet again saying, hey, do you mind giving me a ride? Hey, do you mind giving me communication or visual support? And often no one is available. So then I have to pay for my Lyft. My Lyft takes me to the wrong place. I have to call and find someone who is willing to show me where to go. It's not only financial stress, but it's also physical and emotional stress just to get to my work meeting, and I'm already sweating and it doesn't look professional. I would like to share the same opportunities that people like you have, that able-bodied people have. They can just get in their car and go anywhere they want. You get to make that decision on your own without anyone interfering or without you having to pay more money just to live. And I want to have access to that as well. And so I'm asking you all a big favor. I'm involved with so many different deafblind programs all over the world. I've worked in almost 16 different countries. And here I am today speaking on behalf of Marylanders, on behalf of my home state. Please help us. Please support this bill in order to make our lives comfortable and easier so that deafblind people don't move out of the state of Maryland. As you all know, the cost of living is going up. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Ariane Carver, and that was a very good attempt, Chair Barnes. And I am a staff attorney at Project HEAL, that is Health, Education, Advocacy, and Law at Kennedy Krieger Institute. Project HEAL is a community-based organization within the Maryland Center for Developmental Disabilities. And the Maryland Center for Developmental Disabilities is Maryland's only university center for excellence in developmental disabilities. And we serve families throughout the state of Maryland by connecting them to vital services, resources, and information. And as a staff attorney for Project HEAL, I represent children with disabilities, including deafblind children. I am here today in support of House Bill 98, which can increase the safety and accessibility for deafblind individuals. This is particularly important for children who are deafblind and can help them access their community more, navigate school, and decrease their isolation from their peers. Without co-navigation services, deafblind individuals face many accessibility and safety barriers when navigating their community, going to school, and trying to make relations with their peers. And as a result, these individuals and these children may either be dependent on their family members or community members to navigate these situations, or may do so unsafely if there are no other resources. And House Bill 98 will ultimately help address these accessibility issues and these safety issues. For these reasons, we request a favorable report on House Bill 98. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to you both for your testimony. Any questions for this panel? All right, thanks again. Have a great day. Louis Finicum and Catherine Fogarty. Louis Finicum and Catherine Fogarty. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Lois Fogarty, or excuse the interpreter. Hello, my name is Lois. I'm very happy to be able to come here today in support of co-navigators. I need a co-navigator to go outside and enjoy a walk. And I need a co-navigator who can sign, who can use tactile sign and haptics. I can't describe the feeling when I have a co-navigator that's comfortable and well-trained and the joy that it brings. One time when I was on a walk, I was behind, there was a little boy that was walking in front of me. And the boy ended up coming up to me. And on his phone, he showed an address. And it made me nervous because I needed to be with a co-navigator. And I didn't really know what was going on. And he was trying to help me, but it wasn't what I needed. And so please support this bill for co-navigators. Thank you. Hello, good afternoon to the chairperson and vice chair and members of the committee. My name is Catherine Fogarty, and I am deafblind. I live in Frederick, Maryland, and I'm here on behalf of the deaf community, deafblind community in Maryland, and passing this co-navigator bill, which will allow us to live independently. I don't want to use Uber anymore, and I don't want to use Lyft anymore. The drivers don't know how to use ProTactile. They don't know how to navigate me into the car. They don't know how to communicate clearly with me. I'd rather use a co-navigator who knows how to communicate and we can coordinate our schedules instead of me having to ask family, friends, and people at work who don't have time to act as a co-navigator. I'm involved with deaf blind camp, deaf workshops, and co-navigators need to be able to come to these things instead of me going to these events and not even feeling comfortable or safe and not knowing what's going on around me. Co-navigators also need to be paid by the state. This is such a critical bill to us in the deafblind community and to me in making the state a better place for me and my deafblind friends so that we can enjoy even things like socializing out in the community so that co-navigators can work with us to support us, to take us to these events, to do doctor's appointments, medical appointments, legal events, and all of the following. Often, we don't have the same opportunities that able-bodied people do. I need the co-navigator bill to pass for safety for everyone, specifically for the deafblind community in the state of Maryland. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.
Again, thank you to you both for your testimony and being with us. Any questions? Okay, have a great day. Thank you so much. Our last witness is William Suggs. William Suggs, come on up. Mr. Suggs is not here? Okay, no problem. Well, to everyone who came out for this hearing, thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, I think there's a Jacob that testified. Maybe he didn't, but can you check? He's the vice president of the Maryland Association of the Deaf.
We can have Jacob come on up.
Thank you for your indulgence, sir.
Sure. Didn't have him on our list, but we're happy to hear from him. Make an exception in this case. Welcome, Jacob.
Hello, my name is Jacob Leffler, and I'm the vice president for the Maryland Association of the Deaf. MDAD is a statewide organization that protects the interests of deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing Marylanders concerning accessibility and equity issues. As you've heard, 1.2 million deaf people live here in Maryland. There are 32,000 deafblind people living in the state of Maryland. These 32,000 people want to live independently and they want to live safely. In our organization, we hear stories from individuals whose lives have been put in danger because of the lack of a co-navigator just when out doing their errands. Co-navigators provide information about the visual environment so that deafblind people can live independently. There are specific trainings for people to become qualified as co-navigators to support the deafblind community. Many of us already volunteer and give our time to the deafblind community to act as a co-navigator. It is now time for you to recognize the needs of deafblind people and get co-navigators paid for their labor. Without co-navigators, deafblind people could be killed by a train, on a walk, or by a bus, or by a car very easily. Or the pharmacy could provide them with the wrong medication, and unknowingly they could take it and permanently damage their health. It's time for the state to acknowledge the deafblind community's needs, and we look forward to seeing the state of Maryland be the first state to pass this bill, and look forward to seeing your support of this bill. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all so much for being with us today. It's really important to hear your testimony and your stories. Thank you so much. That concludes the bill hearing. We'll now move to House Bill 4. Delegate Lewis, Delegate, why don't we let you testify from your desk just this once so we can allow our deafblind community time to funnel out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I'm here to today present my legislation, House Bill 4, which bans our institutions of higher education that receive state funding from considering a prospective student's legacy status during the school's admissions process. Many of our state's institutions already publicize that they don't take into account legacy status. This bill will codify that into statute so that we can preserve the integrity of our school's admissions process and ensure that no one receives an underserved advantage. In the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling in Students for Fair Admission, Inc. versus Harvard College and University of North Carolina, which effectively ended consideration of race in admissions decisions, our focus turns to how we can continue to foster diversity and opportunity in our colleges and universities. While addressing specific aspects of admissions practices, this ruling casts a broader light on the need for equitable access in higher education. After the ruling, President Biden requested that the U.S. Department of Education to offer guidance on the new legal landscape and provide tools to the states to ensure continued equitable access for all to the economic mobility securing and often life-changing opportunity that is higher education. The report underscored the crucial role of higher education in ensuring fair access to educational opportunities, particularly for students from low income and/or underrepresented backgrounds. The stratification of our higher education system by class and race not only perpetuates but exacerbates social inequities. According to the department, using admission practices that favor legacy students can perpetuate the cycle of excluding underserved students from higher education opportunities and can run counter to institutional goals of creating a socioeconomically and racially diverse campus. While the recommendations in the report are expansive, and I do suggest the state review them all, our proposed legislation is focused on the recommendation of banning legacy admissions. By banning legacy admissions, we are taking a decisive step toward dismantling barriers that have long hindered socioeconomic and racial diversity in our institutions. Legacy admissions, by their very nature, privilege a select and likely wealthy few, often at the expense of equally deserving students who lack such connections or wealth. This issue is also not new to Maryland. As stated at the outset, most of our higher education institutions already have policies, but not all of them, and we aim to rectify that. Even Johns Hopkins University, the most selective university in the state, has banned legacy admissions. As stated in a recent Washington Post article, by banning legacy admissions, diversifying where they recruit, and devoting resources and scholarships to students in need, the university has moved from 9% of incoming freshmen having legacy connections in 2013 to less than 2% in 2022, while underrepresented racial and ethnic groups increased to 34%. Our institutions that consider legacy status should follow this model. As President Biden aptly noted, our colleges should reflect the diversity of America. They should value and recognize the adversities overcome by students of all paths to achieving their education. This is not just about adhering to legal standards. It's about upholding moral ones. Therefore, as we discuss the future of higher education system today, let's remember that at the heart of this conversation are the dreams and aspirations of thousands of young Marylanders. It's about ensuring that every student, regardless of their lineage, has a fair chance to succeed. Lastly, I want to clarify what this bill is not. This bill is not to prohibit our institutions from advertising their schools through their alumni networks. It also does not prohibit institutions from sending birthday gifts or other paraphernalia to the children of alumni to get them interested in following their parents' footsteps. As stated in Judge Roberts' opinion for the majority on this, students must be treated based on his or her experiences as an individual. Spoken another way, merit should be merit through and through. With this bill, we are ending in Maryland what is perhaps the oldest and most pervasive form of affirmative action, legacy admissions. Thank you for your time, and I urge a favorable vote on House Bill 4.
Any questions for the bill sponsor, Delegate Ruff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Delegate Lewis. So I often find in trials when a jury hears something that they're not supposed to consider, it seems to me that oftentimes jurors have a difficult time actually not considering that. So I'm wondering if you have learned as you've gone through this bill any particular mechanism that could serve to prohibit the consideration of the legacy relationship, despite the fact that that relationship is divulged to the university.
Thank you, Delegate. So what the bill does is that it asks you to have a policy in place because all of our public higher education institutions have public statements and their admissions processes are reviewed. The not public ones, the private ones, is crowded a little bit more mystery. Some of them have affirmative policies. Others have policies that don't expressly say that they allow for legacy admissions, but they have legacy scholarships, right? Which is clearly, incentivizing, legacy students to apply, knowing that they will get a full scholarship. In conversations with their representation, I've essentially said that, if you have an endowment by an alumni who says that they want their endowment to go to legacy students, that's private money in their business, right? But if public taxpayer money is going to these institutions that are paid for by all the people of Maryland, then their admissions should be fair to all the people in Maryland. So they need to have a public policy that then, if there is any question, they can be challenged on because they have a public policy that everyone can see. Hopefully I addressed your question.
Thank you.
It doesn't look like there's any opposition to the bill. Delegate Stanko.
Would you be open to potentially thinking through an amendment to also include or donors? So imagine a scenario where I'm a legacy, we're both legacies of College Park, we're both alumni of College graduates, excuse me, for the record, graduates of College Park. Theoretically, our children wouldn't have a benefit there, but let's say that one of us became worth $100 million to make it simple, and we wanted to make a large donation to College Park so that it wouldn't be a legacy admission, but it would be a donor admission. Would you consider adding that into the language?
I would love to talk to you about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to discuss that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing the bill, Delegate Lewis. I guess my question was, how do you determine if they're for a legacy of somebody, I guess, who's in the ballpark of what the average acceptance would be at a private institution? I mean, how do you even go about proving that? And should that person who's right there with everybody else, who's had 6, 7, who knows, 8 family members go to this institution and has a long story tradition there, should that not be a factor to help them? Not the I understand, and I could agree with you on a sole basis, like somebody shouldn't go there, but if they've proven themselves right there with everybody else, and this is something that is a long-standing tradition, how do you go about that?
So when students apply to college, they can tell their story, their narrative of why they want to go there for all sorts of reasons. When I applied to University of Maryland to attend an undergrad, one of the reasons that I wrote was because I participated in Gary Williams' basketball camp, and it was the first time I was ever on a college campus. and it gave me the opportunity to visualize myself. On top of the fact that I knew I was interested in government, in public service, and they had a great program. That was my narrative. I also had the grades to match it, right? And SAT scores to match it. And I think what we're trying to say that if any student reaches the standards, that should be it. There shouldn't be flexibility just because your parent attended there, because that doesn't serve the institution, or creating the type of dynamic campus that we all believe we should have. So hopefully that addresses your question.
You know, it does. And I really didn't know enough about it, but if there is a situation where solely because like, and maybe there are, I just didn't know. I mean, just solely being a legacy says, yeah, we're taking them in, and you're trying to stop that more so than, I mean, you kind of just addressed it, but more so somebody who's already qualified based on the requirements.
Thank you,
So
Delegate Metzger.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Lewis, for bringing this in. The thought that came into my mind was, does not all institutions have a mission statement?
I believe every organization has a mission statement.
Particularly a private institution have a mission statement. And in that mission statement, doesn't it generally say, we take them all?
I haven't reviewed every one of their mission statements, but I assume that they are all focused on trying to expand, educational opportunities for everyone that they can.
Years ago in my other life, I was a development director for a private college in North Dakota. And in that, when I would receive money, I guess I was ahead of the curve, because I would make sure that the donors I would tell them that this is going to go to money that students cannot afford. And they would generally say, yes, please do that. So my thought was, we should really take a look at Brother Delegate Schono's amendment and add the word donor to that. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right, any other questions? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 4. We're just going to take House Bill 88 and then get to House Bill 114, because there's only one witness on House Bill 88, or two, I think. Josh Michael and Department.
I have Zach Hands, our Executive Director here. If there are any questions I can't answer. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the House Appropriations Committee. I am Josh Michael, and I serve as Vice President of the Maryland State Board of Education. On behalf of the State Board, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this afternoon in sharing our support for House Bill 88. The bill addresses a simple but important issue of ensuring a competitive retirement package for our state's top education leader by adding the state superintendent of schools to the list of individuals who receive immediate vesting rights in the state retirement and pension system. We met with the state retirement agency, and they have no concerns with this bill. In addition to their role as CEO and Secretary Treasurer of the State Board, the state superintendent of schools is a member of the governor's cabinet and serves as the de facto secretary of MSDE. The position is not currently included on the list of individuals who receive immediate vesting rights. Addressing this issue will aid the state board in recruiting the very best superintendent candidates for many years to come and offer consistency as it relates to a major agency leader. The state board is charged with the appointment of the state superintendent of schools, and in this capacity, we believe that adding the state superintendent to the list of those who immediately vest in the pension system will make the position consistent with peers, and that have an excellent compensation package that will be competitive. As you may know, the market for school superintendents is becoming increasingly more competitive, both local and nationally, and we hope to have the best recruitment tools at our disposal to bring candidates to Maryland. We identify 3 peer groups for the state superintendent: cabinet level peers in state government, state superintendents from across the country, and local superintendents in Maryland. Cabinet level leaders in Maryland, all but the superintendent, already receive this benefit in statute. Superintendent's the only one on the governor's cabinet that does not automatically vest. State superintendent compensation varies greatly nationwide, in large part based on the different governance models in the role. In 18 states, the role is a gubernatorial appointment, and in 12 states, the superintendent is elected. I will note that The vesting period that we have is the longest of any superintendent in the country. In Maryland, local superintendents as employees of LEAs are routinely offered retirement packages beyond the state pension system. State employees, including the state superintendent, are not permitted to receive additional retirement benefits. In total, our LEA superintendent compensation packages routinely exceed total compensation for that of the state superintendent. We believe the simple provision in this bill provides parallel compensation for all cabinet level agency leaders in the state and provides us with the tools to ensure that we recruit top talent for the superintendent role moving forward. State Board request committee issue a favorable report on House Bill 88. This concludes my statement and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you testifying as well or just here for?
Just for any.
Okay, great. Dr. Michael, thank you. Any questions? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing. Thanks. Good luck with your next meeting. Let's turn now back to House Bill 114. Delegate Lewis, if you want to head on up, and I see Pat Moran is with us. If you have a panel, Delegate Lewis, please just bring them on up. See you, Pat. Okay, and whoever else is at the table, just tell us who you are before you testify so we can cross you out. Lewis, welcome.
Thank you. For the record, Delegate Jazz Lewis here in support of House Bill 114. Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and my fellow members of the Appropriations Committee. It is my privilege to present my strong support for House Bill 114, the Arbitration Reform of State Employees Act of 2024. This crucial legislation proposes to blend a constitutional amendment and statutory changes, aiming to refine how our state government resolves contract disputes with state employees through binding arbitration. The core of this bill is to ensure a fair and expedient resolution process by engaging a neutral third-party arbiter. The current system in place doesn't provide any means for really settling disputes. Often negotiations reach a stalemate that can't be resolved by the negotiating parties. In the current process, a neutral fact finder can be appointed to make non-binding recommendations to resolve an impasse. Due to the lack of a forcing mechanism to make those recommendations binding, we often find ourselves in deadlocks that neither party, management, nor employees can break. But even then, management can still impose their desired budget and leave other items unresolved. This situation we encounter under the previous administration results in state workers being denied the equitable negotiation process they rightfully deserve. House Bill 114 seeks to address this by introducing a more just and efficient method for settling contract disputes by utilizing a neutral third-party arbiter. As written, this new system would see both sides agree to an arbiter by July 15th every year, with contract negotiations concluded by September 30th. If an agreement is not reached by October 1st, an impasse is declared, setting off the binding arbitration process. Under the system, both sides present their best and final offer, which the arbiter uses to make final determination by December 15th. This legislation will ensure that we avoid protracted labor disputes and incentivize both sides to come to a mutual agreement. The process outlined in this bill ensures that there is a means to resolve negotiation impasses the administration might have with our state workforce. This process is not revolutionary either, as binding arbitration is already utilized by a number of Maryland counties and municipalities, and the Maryland Transit Administration is already authorized to use binding interest arbitration in the transportation article. Not to mention, the majority of states and the District of Columbia already permit binding arbitration for at least some of their state workforce. In previous years, when this bill was introduced, there was discussion about whether this process would impact our constitutional ability to use our budgetary authority as the legislature. To answer that question, we reached out to the Attorney General's office to weigh in. In a letter response, the AG informed my office that the draft bill does not purport to limit the General Assembly in the constitutional power to increase, diminish, or add items to the budget bill. I'm happy to provide the letter for the committee's review. This assurance solidifies that House Bill 114 creates a balanced and final process, upholding the legislature's duties as custodian of the state's budget. Our state employees are the backbone of our government, and they deserve a fair and timely mechanism to resolve labor disputes and contract negotiations. It is imperative that we rectify the shortcomings of our current process to prevent future harm to our employees and, by extension, the quality of services we deliver to the people of our beloved Maryland. In light of these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 114. Let's take a step forward ensuring our state workforce is supported by a just and efficient process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, and thank you, Delegate Lewis, for introducing this bill. My name is Patrick Moran. I'm the president of AFSCME Maryland. AFSCME represents over 50,000 state, county, and municipal employees across Maryland, many of whom already have binding interest arbitration in their negotiations process at the county and municipal level, with their school boards or the MTA, which is a state entity. Nationally, AFSCME represents public workers who have binding interest arbitration with employers in 26 states and the District of Columbia. We can confidently say that binding interest arbitration has not led to a decline of government anywhere. At the end of the day, reason and fact rule the binding arbitration process, which lead to just outcomes for both parties. The goal for all contract negotiations should be to reach an agreement, not impasse. Philosophical disagreements over the size and scope of government shouldn't lead to government employees ending up on SNAP benefits or in an unsafe environment because pay is too uncompetitive to hire and retain employees. Paying employees and keeping them safe should be an apolitical task of the executive branch. Treating employees with a measure of dignity and letting them have a voice in matters that concern their pay and benefits should be apolitical. An arbitrator is never going to provide for an award that the state cannot afford. That would be counter to fact and reason. Regardless where you are on this issue, I think we can agree that never-ending negotiations or negotiations that lead to one side doing whatever they want are a huge waste of time, effort, and resources for labor and management alike. Public sector workers often have binding arbitration during negotiations as a compromise to not being able to strike. Maryland state and higher education employees have neither. Now is the time to bring Maryland into the 21st century, as we brought folks into the 20th century in the 90s to allow for collective bargaining and help our members move our labor laws into 2024. Please provide a favorable recommendation on House Bill 114 to give all Maryland voters an opportunity to vote this fall on a constitutional amendment to authorize binding interest arbitration for state and higher education employees. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon. My name is David Marr from Conn Smith and Collins. My firm serves as labor counsel to AFSCME Council 3. We also represent other public sector employees statewide, such as firefighters, teachers, professors, other sorts of public sector employees at the state, local, and county levels. So I'm here to explain a little bit about how this works and our experience with it, with binding arbitration. In the scheme that's set forward in this bill, where the parties have reached an impasse at a certain date, in order to ensure that an agreement is arrived at or an arbitral decision is arrived at, if they don't meet that deadline, the arbitrator would take over. At arbitration, the arbitrator would hold a hearing where both sides present evidence and arguments as to their position, and then the arbitrator ultimately arrives at their decision. This bill provides a number of things that the arbitrator looks at. For instance, the ability of the employer to actually pay. Arbitrators, as a rule, are pretty conservative, particularly fiscally. They aren't just going to pick a number in the middle of what the two sides are asking for. It's always going to be tend to be at the lower end. It's never going to be something that an employer is unable to pay, because of course that is the paramount consideration that an arbitrator is going to take into account. What it does do, and what we do see where there is binding interest arbitration, is that parties are more likely to reach an agreement without the need to go to the arbitrator. That's true because both parties know that they cannot just run out the clock, that one party can't simply impose what they believe should be done. And the other party has faith that if they bargain in good faith, that their arguments will be considered, and the parties are able to work it out amongst themselves. And finally, just one note, the Public Employee Relations Board has offered certain amendments on this bill. AFSCME supports those amendments with that have been offered by the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cherish Vick. I'm the Secretary Treasurer for AFSCME Maryland Council 3. I'm a caseworker in adult services under DHS. My story is similar to many state and higher education employees who have worked for the state as long as I have. The number of years we've worked does not match the salary schedule we should be on. Because of years of misstep, we've worked for 15+ years, but only get paid as though we've worked for half the time. As state employees, we understand sacrifice. I started working for DHS at the start of the Great Recession. During that time, state employees gave back over $5 billion in pay and benefits to help balance the budget. We negotiated a furlough plan with the administration to stave off major layoffs. But in 2015 to 2019, when we were no longer in a recession and the state was maintaining big surpluses every year, we hoped to get some fair increases to make up for all that we had lost and keep up with the rising cost of living around us. Unfortunately, this was not Governor Hogan's plan. He was able to manipulate the weak impasse procedure we have currently to run down the clock on negotiations and then implement whatever he wanted anyways. In 2017, we went through the non-binding fact-finding process after the governor rejected our reasonable COLA and STEP proposals. The fact finder ruled in our favor, and the governor's budget that was released the following session still did not have the recommended raises in it. The impact of this today is record staffing shortages and salaries that remain too uncompetitive to fill much needed positions. When we don't have enough staff, overtime costs increase, waiting lists for services get longer, and caseloads get larger and larger. If states like Pennsylvania, California, Illinois, Nebraska, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Ohio, Texas, and Wyoming can provide for binding interest arbitration for state employees, I should be able to have those same rights as a state employee here in Maryland. Please provide a favorable report for House Bill 114. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Any questions for the panel? Delegate Grist.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just reading through, it's just an information letter from DBM. They had a couple of concerns here. I was wondering if you guys could comment on that.
Have one person comment, whoever wants to.
Are you guys familiar with these questions, or should I read them?
Who would you like to answer the question?
Anybody who feels comfortable with answering the question. It doesn't matter to me. The bill will allow a private, we know what that does. This isn't the first time we've seen this bill. This bill provides no method of appeal or review of the private arbitrator's decision. Legislation also strikes language requiring collective bargaining negotiations to conclude before January 1st for any item requiring an appropriation of fund for the next fiscal year. And they said that that would be operationally problematic. So the appeal, I mean, this is binding. So therefore, whatever this private arbitrator that's not connected to state government whatsoever, their decision is final. That is correct, right? I mean, I don't know if you have to respond to that.
Yeah.
Who would like to respond? David?
Thank you. So there is no appeal procedure per se. However, any financial award or decision made by the arbitrator, that would simply go in the budget bill. Once it got to the General Assembly would have the power to do, as it does with everything else in the budget bill, to decrease or raise any line item there.
Okay. And then what about the timing of this in regards to this January 1st issue?
So current.
Okay, that's inaccurate.
Okay.
It has to be resolved by January 1st. All of our contract negotiations have to be resolved by January 1st.
Okay, and is there a concern now? We haven't. Governor Hogan's not here anymore, obviously. Is there a concern with this new administration that we're going to have similar problems that you guys had with?
We've had that problem, Delegate. Happy New Year, Delegate. We've had that problem since the inception of collective bargaining, where it is an unjust process, because at the end of the day, if we don't come to an agreement, whatever administration, whether it be a Democratic or Republican administration, can insert whatever they want, however they want, into the budget, and that's all there is to it. So as a result, we have record vacancies. As a result, we have people that work for the state, as my sister pointed out, who've given up $5 billion plus over the years, when times have been good, have not been brought up to speed. So you have people that have worked, there are people in the audience behind me that can attest to this, many of them, that have worked for the state for 20 plus years, but they're at the pay scale as if they've been working for the state for 10 years. So their wages are not keeping up with the rate of inflation, and therefore their buying power is down, and therefore revenues are down as a result of that, because our members spend every dime they earn. They're not investing in hedge funds. They aren't able to afford to invest in the 401k that the state has, because wages are so.
No, I understand. I understand your role in all of this as far as the union goes. And I guess the other side of that, they're representing the taxpayer, and both representation in both sides is equally important in this, and hopefully.
And that's what arbitration would do, because it's based on fact and reason. And if the state can't afford to pay that, the arbitrator is not going to award that. And then secondly, as my attorney pointed out, the legislature has the right to cut whatever they want out of that decision in the budget.
I understand that as well, but we also pay people
We have
a lot
plenty of
of
time
money
for debate, Delegate. You have any other questions? Delegate Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. Thank you, Delegate Lewis. We were running out of time there, and I believe we were getting to this, but just to be clear, because there was buzzers and we were all hurrying. How many other states have already authorized binding interest arbitration for contract negotiations?
26.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
26 in the District of Columbia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Edelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Moran, quick question for you, which is, one of the major goals of this administration and this legislature is to appropriately staff up our state government to provide resources and support to Marylanders. Can you give us a sense of how, you mentioned that some of our state employees have binding interest arbitration and others don't, how that disparate treatment impacts our ability to hire and retain quality employees in our public agencies?
Well, if your wages are more attuned to other markets, such as the counties, the District of Columbia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and more competitive, then you're going to keep people at home. But the state, unfortunately, is not competitive with most of the counties and surrounding states. Surprisingly, Virginia pays in many instances more than Maryland does. So it's difficult to maintain people. And then on top of that, you have the federal government, which pays above and beyond everyone else.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, thanks. Great to see
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you.
We have three more in favor of the bill: Christopher Ryan, Erica Snipes, and Michael Hayes. You can all come on up, and whoever gets to the table first, begin your testimony. 2 minutes. Okay. Erica Snipes and Michael Hayes, come on up. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and all members of the House Appropriations Committee. As was mentioned, my name is Michael Hayes. To my right is, well, I'm the chairman of Maryland's Public Employee Relations Board, or PERB. To my right is the executive director of PERB, Erica L. Snipes. We've also submitted written testimony, and our amendments, we thank AFSCME for supporting our amendments, and it's just to avoid overlap between the jurisdiction of the PERB created just last year, the Public Employee Relations Act, and these arbitrators. Basically, we already have investigators who can stop unfair labor practices and bargaining, can facilitate provision of information. So we just ask that you give the PERB a chance to enforce the Public Employment Relations Act that you passed last year, and we're working hard to enforce that statute. I'm willing to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Erica Snipes. I'm the acting executive director of PERB, and I certainly second everything our chair has said. And I urge you to pay some close attention to the amendments that we submitted, which AFSCME says that they support, that would indeed address the issue of the overlap in jurisdiction areas. So we think that could be something that you could move forward with. So I thank you for the time, and we're here to answer questions.
Great. Any questions for this panel? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We have one in opposition, Sherry Rojas.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony on House Bill 114. My name is Sherry Rojas. I'm the Director of Labor for the USM office. The USM submitted written testimony, so I'll try to be brief here today. Collective bargaining has existed for employees of the USM's 12 institutions for more than 20 years. The existing statutory process works. For the past 2 decades, the institutions have successfully negotiated in good faith with their exclusive representatives, and in almost every instance, reached agreement on an MOU without the need for third-party intervention. We've had 7 separate MOUs successfully negotiated and ratified over just the past 2 years. And as many of you know, the USM is currently engaged in consolidated bargaining with AFSCME over a very first MOU that will be applicable to 15 units across 9 institutions. The parties have worked hard over the past 16 months under an entirely new process that went into effect only 2 years ago, and they've made tremendous and real progress, reaching tentative agreement in December on a wage package. This bill seemingly attempts to fix a problem that doesn't exist and proposes an additional substantial shift in the bargaining process right as we'd be concluding this first consolidated bargaining cycle. More importantly, if the terms required to be implemented by a single third-party arbitrator go unfunded, House Bill 114 would bind the institutions to effectuate the final written award without any additional resources to do so, likely resulting in an increase to tuition and fees or a reduction in services and positions. The ability to utilize a third-party neutral already exists through the existing fact-finding process, which is not insignificant and can be used to effectively bring an impasse to resolution. The existing process should be maintained. For all of these reasons, and as provided in our written testimony, the USM respectfully asks for an unfavorable report on House Bill 114 as written. If the committee is inclined to move this bill, the USM would appreciate the opportunity to offer amendments and participate in such conversations to the same extent as the proponents. Thank you. Thank you.
I think Delegate Wilkins is with us, and please bring your panel up, but have them introduce themselves so we can cross them off the list.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'll have the rest of the panel introduce themselves quickly as you're instructed. Shamoya Gardner, Strong Schools, Maryland.
Ellie Mitchell, Maryland Out of School Time Network and Maryland Coalition for Community Schools.
May I proceed? Good afternoon, Appropriations Committee. Hello, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair. Wonderful to be here before you, and hello to the entire committee. For the record, I am Delegate Janelle Wilkins, and I'm pleased to present HB 200, Community Schools Alterations, which is jointly assigned with the Ways and Means Committee. The blueprint for Maryland's future solidified community schools in our state and made a very deep investment in providing wraparound services and staffing for community schools using the concentration of poverty grants. We now have over 450 community schools throughout our state. HB 200 ensures that we further strengthen our community schools by adopting national best practices. The bill includes several provisions, such as expanding the definition of community schools. It ensures that school districts with less than 40 community schools have the flexibility to use their grant funds more in a way that they can expend 10% or less of the per pupil grant on behalf of eligible schools. So it provides more flexibility for those jurisdictions that don't have as many community schools. It also ensures and clarifies that our per pupil grant funding has to be based on grant spending on the most recent needs assessment plan. And it strengthens the needs assessment to ensure that parents and stakeholders and community leaders have a really strong say around the needs that the community schools are looking to meet. The bill also strengthens the input of families and parents in this community schools model. So overall, this is a bill that takes a look at the community schools model all across our state and ensures that what we know about national best practices are being implemented here in the state of Maryland. This bill actually has no fiscal effect on the state, and it has the broad coalition of support from the Public School Superintendents Association, the Maryland State Board of Education, Strong Schools Maryland, MSCA, the Baltimore Teachers Union, and the Coalition of Community Schools. This is a priority bill for Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland, and I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I am the current director of the Maryland Coalition for Community Schools, which is backboned by the Maryland Out of School Time Network. And we are here because community schools is truly a transformative practice in schools, but only when done with fidelity to the models that have been worked out nationally. And some of the elements of those models include really authentic engagement with key stakeholders. Some of that, unfortunately, was left out of the definition of community schools when we originally had it included in the blueprint. A definition that was actually in law prior to the blueprint that kind of got smushed into the legislation. You know how legislative sausage making works. So now we are back to trying to really carve out that true definition. A couple of important things here. The needs assessments are one of the key data points for us to understand what is happening in community schools. And we need to have them at least in some portion apples to apples. So that data can be rolled up and more systemic solutions to the problems that are facing schools can be implemented through the community school strategy. And the districts need this flexibility deeply. For example, Baltimore County, until recently, had somewhere around the term of 39 schools. At least one year, they had 39 schools. They were receiving more money through CPG and Title I dollars than they do in Title I dollars, and they had no ability to coordinate those dollars, provide additional supports through the funding they were receiving through the blueprint. So this flexibility is very important. This is a common sense bill. It has no fiscal note, and we are very excited for it to pass. We urge a favorable report.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. As has already been said, this bill has no fiscal note. Easy decisions here. Strong Schools Maryland, in addition to advocating for the passage of the blueprint, also has stuck around to make sure it's implemented with fidelity and that Marylanders across the state are appropriately educated on what the blueprint has to bear for them and their communities. What we have realized in the last several years of being engaged with folks, hosting workshops, doing summer tours and the like, is that one, a lot of people don't fully understand what the intent of the blueprint is. Two, a lot of folks who are responsible for implementing things like community schools don't understand how much potential is available to them. And three, we really needed to codify best practices language. So we do hope that the committee supports this legislation. If you're looking for specific examples, I encourage you all to look at the testimony submitted by a community school coordinator from Prince George's County, Shakima White, detailing the difficulties that she faces without having this sort of statutory backing up as to what it is her role is responsible for and how it is that she can have the greatest and best impact on her communities. Frankly, it's also worth noting that, media outlets across the state are not entirely friendly to public education. There is at least one that's already questioning the multi-million-dollar investment we're making in our community schools. Again, places where students are experiencing concentrated poverty. And so what we want to be able to do with the passage of this law is to also ensure that you all have the standing to defend the decisions you've made about how we're allocating these resources. We are friendly to all amendments that have been proposed thus far and look forward to continuing conversations with the committee. We urge a favorable report on this bill.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Any questions from this panel? Delegate Wilkins, thanks for the bill. We welcome bills that bolster our blueprint and the impetus behind the blueprint. And I think it really just bolsters our overall commitment to the blueprint. So we appreciate appreciate the bill. Thanks for being with us. We have 4 more witnesses today on this bill. Shannon Pugh, Rodney Walker, Rebecca Barnes, and Denise Schaefer. You can all come on up, and whoever gets there first can start testifying.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Dr. Shannon Pugh, and I serve as the Anne Arundel County Blueprint Implementation Coordinator, and I oversee the community school strategy in our district. This year, we had 12 AACPS schools that improved by at least 1 star on the Maryland State Report Card. And of these 12, 9 of these are Blueprint community schools. We do not believe that this is a coincidence. The AACPS community school strategy is working. We enthusiastically support the proposed amendments that would allow districts with less than 40 schools to utilize up to 10% of the per pupil grant to provide district-wide supports for our schools. We support this because putting the grant management duties on the community school coordinators has been an unrealistic expectation. Coordinators are spending more time working on budget, payroll, contracts, and grant documentation than they are working with our families and students. And this is also simply not sound stewardship. In addition, we understand that the sponsors of the bill are considering requested amendments that would remove the language that would give MSDE the ability to modify school level needs assessments and implementation plans. To give MSDE, who does not know about our schools, communities, and our district goals and priorities, a veto over the work that our schools are doing is in direct contradiction to the philosophy behind the National Community School Strategy. Our schools are spending 2 years working with families, partners, community members, and district offices to write and create their needs assessments and plans. MSDE is not part of this process and should not have the authority to dictate to individual schools how to best serve our families and students. Accordingly, I respectfully request a favorable with amendments report on House Bill 200. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Dr. Rebecca Barnes, and I'm a first-year community school coordinator at Park Elementary School in Anne Arundel County. I came to the community school coordinator position from a Title I math teacher role. I wanted to speak to you about the different levels of support I have received in each role and implore you to support this bill with amendments, which would allow districts to utilize up to 10% of grant funding at the central office level to support those of us in schools. In my role as a Title I math teacher in a school, I did have a small budget to manage, but outside of ensuring that my Title I plan was affordable, my direct role in grant management was minimal. The district Title I office used grant funds to build a district-wide grant management support so that someone with financial expertise was effectively managing the day-to-day budgetary tasks such as payroll, ordering from the master agreements, and negotiating and paying for contracted services. Currently, under the blueprint, districts cannot use grant funds for district-wide support to community schools until this district reaches the arbitrary number of 40 schools. So right now, what was done at the central office level to support the Title I program is not replicated for the community school program. As a community school coordinator, I spent up to half of my time working on budgetary and financial minutia that could easily be done by someone at the district level who could do it more efficiently and effectively, leaving me time to work with my families, staff, and community to build a strong community school program that will directly impact student success. Please allow this support so I can focus on the people work rather than the paperwork. As you heard from Dr. Pugh, we request the bill to be amended to remove proposed language that would give MSDE the ability to change school level needs assessments and implementation plans. And we appreciate the sponsor's willingness to work with us to amend the bill. Accordingly, I respectfully request a favorable with amendments report on House Bill 200.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. My name is Denise Schaefer, and I'm a proud AACPS principal. North Glen Elementary School, where I'm the principal, is in our second year of being a Blueprint community school. Last year, we spent the entire year working with our families, community partners, staff, and district offices to identify the unique needs of the students and families at North Glen. This year, we've spent the past 5 months continuing this work as we draft our 3-year community school implementation plan. We brought in a diverse group of school and community stakeholders to identify the needs and assets in our community and to help draft our plan on how we are going to work to remove out-of-school barriers to student success. With this in mind, I was troubled to read the proposed amendments to Blueprint that would give MSDE the authority to require schools to change their needs assessments and implementation plans. To allow MSDE to do so would undermine the work that we have done with community members and our families and staff for the past 1.5 years. We appreciate the sponsor's willingness to amend the bill accordingly. Community schools are designed to meet the unique needs of each school community. This work needs to remain with schools, communities, and districts so that the implementation plan that our community builds truly reflects our work. I can't imagine spending 2 years working on these comprehensive plans that reflect the community's voice, only to have them modified by someone at MSDE who has never been to my school, met my community, or analyzed our needs and assets at such a granular level. Thank you for your support of the community school strategy. I do believe that the strategy has the potential to have a big impact on students, families, and communities. I request a favorable with amendments report on House Bill 200.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Walker was unable to join us. Would I be able to provide testimony on his behalf? Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Bars, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Grace Wilson. I'm Legislative and Policy Specialist for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. You've heard about our support for the use of funds for districts to support schools in areas such as grant management, but I also wanted to share a concern that our community partners have. Our various partners, such as our community college, our health department, our food banks, our libraries, and other nonprofits are begging us to streamline the approach to partnering with community schools. So 23, soon to be 37 community schools in Anne Arundel County are not individually reaching out and trying to create individual agreements with these partners. This is too much for our partners to navigate and ultimately impacts the work of our schools. Allowing the use of funds for district support benefits our schools as well as our various community partners. Last week, we shared our concerns about the current wording in this bill that would give MSDE increased authority over the work of community schools with Senator Washington, and we believe that there is support to modify the language that we object to in this bill as currently written. We oppose giving MSDE the authority to change the content of our school's needs assessment and implementation plans. We support the guidance and partnership with MSDE, but the final authority for format and final content of the needs assessment and plans needs to remain with schools, communities, and the district. As such, I respectfully request a favorable with amendments report on House Bill 200. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Thanks for your work. That concludes the bill hearing. We'll now turn to House Bill 52, Delegate Stewart. Delegate, if you have a panel, I think there are 2 other witnesses. If they're in your panel, they can come on up. Denise Gilmore and Lauren Reeder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for being late. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the illustrious Appropriations Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Vaughn Stewart, and this is House Bill 52. So this bill concerns just about the worst thing that can happen to a parent, and that's the loss of a child. And I know this is a topic that hopefully none of you have felt super personally, but I think does hit close to home for a lot of folks somewhere in their family tree or their friend network. Personally, for me, I was a pediatric cancer patient, and both of my sons, they're now 5 and almost 1, both of them had complicated births that made us, for at least brief moments, wonder if everything was going to be okay. Right now in Maryland, we have a very limited bereavement leave policy. What it says is that for state workers, if you have a loss of a loved one, you can either use 5 of your sick days, you get up to 15. You either use 5 of your 15 sick days for bereavement, or you get 3 separate bereavement paid days that don't dig into your sick leave policy. And in putting in this bill, essentially what we're saying is that that's not enough for such a momentous, profound, and deep loss. What the bill proposes, and this is with a sponsor amendment, so it might be a little bit different than what you've got in your packets. But what the bill says is twofold. First, that state workers would get 10 days of paid bereavement leave if they lose a child, and the child is between the ages of 6 months and 27 years old. The purpose of this 10-day policy is to allow parents to recover emotionally, at least obviously to some limited extent, and also to make necessary funeral and burial arrangements. Right now, we don't think that 3 days is enough time to do either of those things. 10 days might not be either, but at least it's a step in the right direction. The second part of this bill, and this is not, again, not in your packet, this is a sponsor amendment, says that parents who have who experience a stillbirth or who experience the loss of a child before their 6-month birthday would be eligible for 60 days of paid bereavement leave. This is meant to be analogous to the current situation with paid parental leave that some state workers enjoy. The rationale for this is that because parents have to recover not only emotionally, not only the arrangements of for their children, the funeral and burial arrangements, but also they have a physical element to this. They have to recover physically just as they would have if their child had been born without any complications. And my personal view, and we'll hear more about this from my panelists, but my personal view is it's a little perverse to give state workers 60 days of paid leave only if their children survive childbirth, but 3 days if their child does not. And this bill attempts to correct that imbalance. So why should we pass it? I mean, I think basically 2 reasons. One is the one that I've touched on already, which is just basic human empathy. This is a really tough loss for people. And how can we expect state workers to be effective in their jobs, many of which are vital to the success of the state, if we're only giving them 3 to 5 days to get themselves and their arrangements and their finances and their lives in order after such a jarring impact? The second reason, not as important, but I think still important, is that this state is still facing, as this committee knows more than any other, a vacancy rate. An intolerably high number of vacancies in state workers. And you should know that both the District of Columbia and the federal government offer 2 weeks paid bereavement leave for the loss of a child. Those are both relatively new policies as of 2 or 3 years ago. And I think it's not as important as basic human decency, or empathy. But I will say that as we try to outcompete the federal government and the District of Columbia for workers, especially those people that live in the capital region, and maybe want to work for the state of Maryland, I think it's important that we provide some parity when it comes to pay and benefits. Now, I don't think that the average person is going to necessarily look at the child bereavement policy before they accept a job, but I do think it's important that even for some of these fringe things that affect a small number of people immeasurably, that we're on pace with some of these peer jurisdictions. You'll note that there's essentially no fiscal note because fortunately this doesn't happen a whole lot. And with that, I would just say that HB 52 would represent a small but significant step in maybe closing our vacancy rate, but definitely providing some basic dignity and decency to our state workers. And I urge a favorable report.
That's fine.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. My name's Lauren Ryder. I'm testifying personally. However, I do work for the Department of Social Services under the purview of the Maryland Department of Human Services. I graduated with my MSW from UMB in 2014, and I've worked for DSS for 9.5 years. I supervise 7 staff who go into families' homes following a CPS investigation to ensure permanency and well-being for children while in their home environment. Just over a year ago, I gave birth to my son, Noah, who was immediately taken to the PCICU at Hopkins, where he lived for 20 days, receiving 2 surgical procedures during that time. I can count on one hand how many times I was able to hold my baby, one of them being the 2 hours leading up to his death. The minute that his heart stopped beating, sorry.
The minute that his heart stopped beating was the minute I no longer qualified for the 8.5 weeks of parental leave that I had been approved for. Despite the fact that I had given birth just like all other mothers, the only leave I qualified for was 3 days of bereavement leave. Tell me why a grieving mother is expected to return to work after 3 days, while a mother whose baby lives is allowed up to 12 weeks of paid leave. Sure, I could have used my sick leave, but I wasn't sick. I was grieving. And what would I have done when I got sick? It would have been irresponsible for me to return to the job that I do for DSS in the devastated state that I was in, only after 3 days. Noah's funeral wasn't even planned in 3 days. Please take a minute to think about this. Please do the right thing and pass this bill. Lead the charge and make this change. Thank you.
Testimony, and so sorry for your loss, and thank you for the courage you've shown today in testifying here. It means a lot. Any questions for the bill sponsor? Okay, thank you again. Have a great day. We have 25th member of our committee, Denise Gilmore.
It's very funny. Good afternoon, Denise Gilmore, Legislative Director with AFSCME Council 3. We represent state workers, county workers, municipal workers. We are here testifying in support of HB 52. I think one of the worst calls that we can get as a union representative is an employee who, has gone through a really tragic event like the death of a child and has to make that really tough choice between going on like an unpaid leave status to mourn or, continue working with the grief. Luckily, these calls don't happen much, but when they do happen, they are heart-wrenching. This legislation, we certainly support efforts to expand parental bereavement leave. And this legislation, will help certainly those folks who are going through those terrible situations. It is worth noting the reason legislation is important is because, certainly we try to negotiate, parental leave for represented units. As you heard from the sister who talked here before, they're going to have a bill on this coming up in HB 260, but there are, supervisors, for instance, in the state who don't have collective bargaining rights. Anything that would get negotiated wouldn't necessarily extend to them. So you would need legislation to make sure that we're covering state supervisors. We also are thankful to the sponsor for working with us on a couple of amendments. We think if one state employee can have this right, it certainly makes sense for our state employees in higher education to have them as well. So that would be one amendment that we would love to work with the committee on to make sure our employees in higher education are included, and that we don't at least move backwards on any rights that state employees have. So we want to really appreciate the delegate for working with us on these amendments and support the bill. Thank you.
Speaking of, that concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 52, moving to House Bill 260, Delegate Chang. Yeah, anyone you want.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you very much for your time to present House Bill 260. What the bill does, it grants the collective bargaining rights for supervisors in our workforce in the state of Maryland. And right now, currently, there are employees and supervisors in Prince George's County, Howard, and Baltimore City who are already authorized to have this collective bargaining. Also, supervisors and principals in our K through 12 public schools have this collective bargaining authorized in the education article. And lastly, currently, there's no legal barrier to giving state supervisors collective bargaining rights. It's just a policy decision. And our committee, Appropriations Committee, has consistently affirmed the right for workers for collective bargaining. So
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this bill. And we have with us several members here who are going to provide testimonies on this. Thank you.
Again, Denise Gilmore, Legislative Director for AFSCME Council 3. We represent state, county, and municipal employees here to testify in support of HB 260. HB 260 enables collective bargaining rights for employees assigned to bargaining unit S. So that is the bargaining unit for supervisors in state government. These are middle tier supervisors in the executive branch who largely do not have, direct hiring and firing power. That goes to the appointing authority. They are merit employees and thus can already file grievances and appeals of discipline. However, when they're promoted to supervisory roles, they lose their collective bargaining rights because they're exempted in current law from having these rights. Just as Vice Chair Chang mentioned, there really is no legal barrier to granting these employees collective bargaining rights. Again, elsewhere in the Maryland public sector, we've done this in some counties and jurisdictions, and with our K through 12 boards nationally, AFSCME has organized supervisors in 12 states, including Pennsylvania, Minnesota, and Florida. The General Assembly this session has the opportunity to enable collective bargaining rights for thousands of public employees. By voting yes, you're enabling collective bargaining rights. You are simply allowing these workers the chance to have a say. Strong collective bargaining policies promote fair wages and working conditions, help reduce wage gaps for women workers and workers of color, helps to develop better job safety protections and leave benefits, and helps employees avoid unfair treatment when they choose to exercise their rights. Both labor and management benefit positively in collective bargaining environments. You will hear from some more of our state supervisors now about why this legislation is so critical in their lives and for the work that they do for all of us for the state of Maryland. We urge a favorable report on HB 260. And if it's okay, I can hand it over, I think, to Mr. Walter Moore first.
Good afternoon. My name is Walter Moore Jr. I'm a proud state employee as well as the AFSCME member. I am here today to ask you to support HB 260. I work at Springfield State Hospital Center. I've been there for a year and a half as a security attendant supervisor. After spending 15 years working for the state as a supervisor, without collective bargaining rights, I see every day how we're impacted by not having a voice and not being able to bargain over our working conditions. Our work site at Springfield Hospital is 400 acres. It is a lot of ground to cover. And when we don't have a lot of staff, we are sufficiently less safe. It takes more than what we have to cover the units and the grounds. There have been traumatic situations that have occurred since I've been here. I'm a strong guy, but when you see your coworkers that have been struck several times in the face, and you're running from another building to run to assist them, and when you arrive, you're not quite able to attend to their needs as you would want to. There's no way I can even explain that. We know there are basic safety practices and training that we can keep attending security attendant staff and patients safer, but we need to be able to negotiate and bargain with them. Through collective bargaining, we can negotiate for higher standards of training support and can hold labor management committee meetings and address our issues. We can improve conditions so we can hire and train more staff. Ultimately, we can be there for our patients to help them get back into the community. For this reason, I ask you to support HB 260 collective bargaining unit for supervisors.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Whoever's next.
Hi, my name is Crystal Cooper, and I'm a proud AFSCME member. I ask you to support HB 260 and collective bargaining rights for supervisor. I am a supervisor at the Annapolis branch MVA. I have been a supervisor for 2 years now. And while I love what I do, I have been left without a seat at the table. As supervisors, we do not have the ability to negotiate with our employer over our working conditions or workplace policies. We do not have anyone to represent us when making decisions about the work that we do. Recently, after having a party in the middle of the floor because our hours, Thursday late hours and Saturday hours were going to be cut, they were funded. While we want to make sure that our services are expanded and improved, we also would like a seat at the table of how these decisions impact us. Customer agent supervisors, as myself, are the ones who have to close out the agents at the end of the day. After we close out the agents and make sure that state property is secured along with state funds, then we can leave and go home to our families on the late Thursdays and Saturdays. We are the ones who are ultimately responsible for ensuring adequate coverage at all times. I often have to decline events from my family, have Zoom meetings while driving, skip Bible study, or pray that I can get to where I need to be in a timely manner due to these expanded work commitments. With HB 260s, we as supervisors would finally secure collective bargaining rights that would allow us to have a say in our workplace policies, such as these expanded hours, including our scheduling and how comp time works and many more issues. As supervisors, we are the experts in our agencies and how our office operates. We should have a recognized and protected voice to weigh in on those decisions that shape our work and our services and our agencies. For this reason, I ask you to please support HB 260.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Ashley Jenkins, and I too am a proud member of AFSCME. I've worked in the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services at the Baltimore City Correctional Center for approximately 11 years. I'm here today to speak in support of HB 260 and collective bargaining rights for supervisors. I became a supervisor approximately about a year ago, and I had a desire to become a supervisor because I wanted to affect change. I was excited, extremely excited, but that excitement didn't last long. Once I realized I inherited short staffing crisis, I was severely overworked, and as a supervisor, that my concerns continued to go unheard without collective bargaining rights. It didn't seem so exciting. One of the issues that impacted me significantly is the loss of a work balance due to forced overtime due to short staffing. I'm regularly drafted to work mandatory overtime, but as a supervisor, I don't receive pay for these extra hours. Instead, I receive comp. As a single parent with a son who's in his first year of college, an elderly mother I care for, and 2 nephews with special needs, I often forfeit time with them, as well as I'm struggling with college tuition and medical bills with no means of opportunity to incur overtime to help with my growing financial obligations. While I would like to get a part-time job, that's almost unrealistic. I don't have the time due to constraints and the demands that are placed upon me. Without collective bargaining and the ability to have input on policies and initiatives to better recruit and retain staff, morale continues to remain low, and people have no incentive to stay in these roles. I see many of my coworkers leaving, resigning, most of them due to not feeling heard. There's no incentive to remain in these positions, and the staff coming behind have no incentive to move up. Collective bargaining rights for supervisors would allow us the opportunity to bring our concerns to the forefront and be respected, valued, and appreciated. So I ask you to please support HB 260 and pass collective bargaining rights for supervisors, as this would give us a voice and a seat at the table to advocate for change. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Thanks for being with us today. Any questions of the sponsor or the panel? Good, Harris.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chair. So this question for Ms. Gilmore. So the state and AFSCME just pretty much just wrapped up negotiation. Can you share what was gained for the state workers in that contract?
So I think in the spirit of good faith bargaining, I'm gonna not get into the specifics on the terms. We're going through a ratification right now. But I think the important part to note with your question is, whatever was agreed to The only guarantee really is that it affects obviously the represented bargaining units. For folks who don't have the opportunity to collectively bargain with the state, they're oftentimes left at the whim of either what other bargaining units negotiate under the previous administration. Some bargaining units got one pay set, another bargaining unit got a different pay set. So really the only guarantee, at least for these folks, is, the opportunity to negotiate an agreement on wages.
And then are the same provisions extended to all employees and supervisors?
There's often a Me Too, but again, I think part of the reason we are seeing such a flourish of organizing among our supervisor unit right now is, again, under the previous administration, there were, I think about in corrections, for instance, there were longevity and retention bonuses, for instance, negotiated. Our lieutenants were, supervisors were originally left out of that. Those are the kinds of things that really affect morale and, get people to start organizing to hopefully have a voice and an opportunity to have a collective bargaining agreement. I think that's what we're seeing right now.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair Chang, thank you so much. And I also just want to thank your panel for really drilling down in a personal way why comp time doesn't help the bottom line at home. That was extremely powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Vice Chair Chang, I believe you started to say it at the beginning. I couldn't hear you. The number of jurisdictions throughout the state that already allow this, what are they? I heard some big five, but I couldn't hear everything.
Sure. Currently Prince George's County, Howard County, and Baltimore City, those supervisors and those government agencies have collective bargaining right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, there's going to be amendments that will be submitted. They just conform to Senate Bill 192's cross file. It just clarifies as far as the supervisors and the categories. So we'll be submitting those.
Great.
And then thank you very much. There's no opposition has been submitted for this bill. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all for being with us. Good day. And good bill hearing, moving to House Bill 144. I think we have from the department, Erica Snipes and Michael Hayes. And if you all wanted to bring any other panelists that are with you, you can bring them up.
Thank you, Chairman Barnes and Vice Chair Chang and all the members of the House Appropriations Committee. Thanks also to Chairman Barnes for sponsoring this. It's a departmental bill and for this opportunity to testify. We also submitted written testimony. Basically, it's just to clarify some matters in the Public Employee Relations Act. We added definition to the term interested party, which is used in PIRA regarding representation elections, just to clarify what employee organizations it refers to. A bill changes references to unfair labor practice complaints to charges, as both terms are used sort of interchangeably in PIRA. The change is consistent with the National Labor Relations Act, referring to charges which are filed by parties and complaints issued by an agency. Finally, the bill would permit PERB deputy directors, our investigators, to be assigned to any unfair labor practice within the entire agency's jurisdiction, instead of one being assigned to a specific type of employer. We've already found in about 6 months of PERB and 4 months of deputy directors, at some points we have lots of public school cases, other times lots of higher education cases, still other times many state government claims. The proposed flexibility would enable deputy directors to get to their cases sooner and would avoid imbalances in their workloads. I'm willing to answer any questions, but I do request a favorable report and passage of this bill. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, Erica Snipes again for Public Employee Relations Board, agreeing with everything that our chair said, and just noting that these changes would bring an even more increased efficiency to what we do, which I think was sort of the point and why we started this new board in the first place. So we thank you for that, and we encourage a favorable report on these changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for the panel? Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you,
being
Chairman
with us.
Barnes.
For your work. David Mayer and Christopher Ryan, come on up. Chris Ryan is here still, I guess not. So David, you're it.
Yes, it's just gonna be me. No Chris Ryan. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is David Marr. I'm an attorney at Conn Smith & Collins. We serve as labor counsel to AFSCME Council 3, and we represent state, county, municipal employees, firefighters, teachers, professors, that list you heard me say before. AFSCME Council 3 supports this bill that makes some technical changes and clarifies the Public Employee Relations Act. We're very grateful that the General Assembly passed that law last year and created the Public Employee Relations Board, and we are very optimistic about the future of that board, and we support this bill.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions?
Thank you.
Sir. Have a good day.
You too.
That concludes the bill hearing. Now turning to House Bill. I see Delegate Lafley, get your car. Come on up. Since you're here, you can go next. House Bill 291. I don't see there any witnesses on it, so I think it's just you.
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Polakiewicz-Carr here to present House Bill 291. This bill cleans up two provisions in the education article regarding public notice by public schools. This bill will allow our local boards of education to operate more efficiently at lower cost and with broader public reach. First, the bill updates a public hearing notice requirement when a new school site is proposed. Currently, if a hearing is to be held on the new school site, it must be advertised in a newspaper of general circulation in the county. This bill would give the school board the option to advertise the hearing on their website instead. Second, the bill updates procurement requirements. Current law is very out of date in several ways. It references physical bid boards and Maryland Contract Weekly, which ceased publication in 2006. This bill updates this section of code to refer to modern methods of advertising procurements, namely the e-Maryland Marketplace, which, as the committee knows, is the state's online procurement system, as well as posting on the district's website. I will note that the change in procurement threshold from 25,000 to 100,000 is not a substantive one. And if you look in the very next section of the education article beyond where my bill is at, 5-112B2, it basically just says that if the amounts differ here between here and state finance and procurement, section 13-109, then the state finance threshold applies. I will note that the Senate EEE committee has already passed the Senate version of this bill with a small amendment in the section on new school site public hearings. They changed an or to an and so that the notice of the public hearing is given in both a newspaper and on the district's website. And I'll say in the spirit of compromise, I can live with that amendment should this committee decide to do the same thing. So thank you.
Thanks for the bill. Any questions for the sponsor? It's a bill hearing. Thanks for being with us. Looks like Delegate Wu was with us earlier. Maybe I can just do the hearing. House Bill 221 is the bill we heard last year. Any questions? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing. House Bill 140, Delegate Rogers. Have we notified Delegate Rogers? We also have 157, Delegate Griffith. I was familiar with these two bills. We didn't hear them last year, so let's just give it 1 second. For Delegate Rogers' bill, we're just gonna have council read us through the fiscal note and take it from there. Okay, Joe? Take a time, we were about to read your fiscal note and move on, so you made it right on time. Go ahead.
Thank you, man. Bring my panel.
Sure.
We only got like 20 people.
That concludes the bill hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the mighty Appropriations Committee. We'll keep this pretty short today. I respectfully request a favorable report on HB 140. This bill requires all appointing authorities in the state personnel management system to apply a credit of 10 points on the selection test for an applicant who is a spouse of an active duty service member of any branch of the uniformed services who is relocating to the state on military orders. This bill also expands the definition of an eligible veteran to mean a veteran of any branch of the uniformed services as opposed to a veteran of any branch of the armed forces of the United States for hiring preferences on selection tests. In both cases, uniformed services is defined by reference to another section of state law, which in turn references the federal law definition. According to the Department of Defense Active Duty Spouses Survey, even pre-pandemic, military spouses had an unemployment rate of approximately 22%. One of the main and initial contributions or contributors to the exceptionally high military spouse employment rate is the frequent moves and transfers. This highlights the negative impact that military spouses face in establishing and sustaining a profession. Maryland law currently provides a 10-point preference for spouses of veterans who have a 30% service-connected disability. Unlike federal law, Maryland does not provide an employment preference for currently serving military spouses who follow their sponsor when they are ordered to move from state to an assignment in Maryland. Maryland state government currently has significant staffing shortages. Some state agencies have anywhere from 10 to 30% vacancies according to the Department of Office of Management, Budget and Management. The state has 10,000 open positions to fill, which includes budgeted and unbudgeted positions. And according to Military OneSource website run by the DoD, Department of Defense, there were approximately 14,292 military spouses in Maryland as of December 31st, 2022. By expanding the coverage of the point preference and active duty military spouses, we could improve career retention and finances for spouses and ultimately military families, as well as benefit the Maryland workforce. As stated in the fiscal note, the bill's requirements can be handled with existing budgeted resources, so no effect on revenues. I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 140.
Thank you, Delegate. Is this Jason Spiegel?
For the record, Jason Spiegel on behalf of the Maryland Military Coalition. We strongly support HB 0140, which will create a hiring preference for the spouse of an active duty service member. This bill supports the administration's Year of the Military Families and will help make Maryland the nation's leader in supporting active duty spouses. This bill aligns the state personnel management system with the Governor's Joins Forces Initiative and the White House Joining Forces Initiative, both of which are focused on reducing underemployment and unemployment of active duty spouses. HB 0140 clearly defines the term active duty spouse, defines an eligible veteran as one who has served honorably in any branch of the uniformed services, and clearly defines uniformed services consistent with federal law. That is why we support this bill over the similar bill, HB 064, the Family Serve Act, introduced by the Speaker on behalf of the administration. The administration's bill is confusing as to whether it applies to uniformed services or armed forces, and HB 0140 makes it very clear that it applies to the uniformed services, including the Commissioned Corps of the Public Health Service, who provide the health care for the Coast Guard, even though they are themselves not an armed force. We strongly support this bill and ask for a favorable report. We also want to thank Delegate Rogers for sponsoring this legislation and his continued leadership in support of uniformed services and military families throughout Maryland. Thank you.
Service. Delegate Spiegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I am not related to Mr. Spiegel, though he is a neighbor in District 17, and I appreciate his advocacy as a leader of the Maryland Military Coalition. As I understand your testimony, Mr. Spiegel, if the definition or term usage for uniformed services, active duty spouses in the administration's priority bill, which is HB 604, were amended to align with the language in HB 140. Do you think the Maryland Military Coalition could get behind that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. At one point, HB 640 refers to armed forces spouses, at another point refers to uniformed spouses, and then it refers to armed forces of the uniformed services, which is just not applicable, it doesn't make sense. So if that language were cleaned up, yeah, we want to support the administration on this. It's very important.
Thank you, sir.
It's in front of a different committee, but that's, it's in front of Health and Government Operations.
Okay. Delegate Wallach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very quick question. Has the task force on the modernization of the state personnel management system, they're working broadly on updates. Have they weighed in on the bill?
I'm not aware whether or not they have.
Okay, thank you.
For the panel? Okay. Great to see you both. Thanks for your service.
Thank you. Always great coming before the mighty Appropriations Committee.
That's right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. That concludes the bill hearing. We're going to turn to Delegate Griffith. Come on up. You may have a panel. You have two sheriffs with you on your panel. Okay, come on up.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Delegate Mike Griffith, and it's great to be presenting here today. I'm requesting a favorable report on HB 157, the Public Schools Appropriation for School Safety Expenditures Increase, the School Safety Enhancement Act of 2024, which doubles the funding for school resource officers statewide from 10 million to 20 million starting in the fiscal year 2026. The need for this increased support is more evident than ever. Over the last several decades, we have seen a rapid increase not only in the number of violent and criminal incidents occurring in our schools, but also the severity of those incidents. In fact, in 2019, the Maryland General Assembly unanimously passed legislation to allocate $10 million for SRO funding statewide. But despite this, the trend of increased incidents on school grounds has continued to climb. This further exacerbated by the fact that only 20.2% of all Maryland public schools have a full-time SRO. With such a low percentage of the increased number of instances on school grounds, students, teachers, and administrative staff are left unprotected and potentially in harm's way. In addition to the protection SROs provide, they also play a vital role in the lives of students within the community in other ways, such as building impactful and meaningful relationships between children and law enforcement, which helps deter and prevent children from committing crimes in the future, and producing positive and life-saving interactions with special needs students attending public schools across the state. Oftentimes, special needs students who sometimes act seemingly but unintentionally violent know their school's assigned SRO and develop a basic level of trust with them. In turn, the SRO understands what makes the students unique and can therefore provide an extra level of protection to them from outside harm. As a father of a special needs child in the Harford County Public School System, this level of protection, understanding, and guidance stemming from an SRO's relationship with my child brings a certain level of peace and security to my life. In fact, that's why I'm honored today to have a hero sitting here with me, Senior Deputy Mitchell, a school resource officer from the Harford County Public School System, who not only has been a vital SRO for more than 20 years, but has saved a life and impacted the school community in more ways than one. This is one common concern I hear and want to address, and that is the idea that SROs arrest for non-violent infractions such as truancy, and that this is a primary focus of their work. I'm here to tell you that is simply not the case. I've spoken with countless SROs who share that arrests are not only the last resort when working with a student, but something they strive to avoid. Furthermore, for scenarios where questions of truancy are the main cause for concern, this is not something even in a SRO's purview. Their primary focus and subsequent action is to build relationships with the school community. And you will hear firsthand from Senior Deputy Mitchell. And with that, I'd like to conclude my testimony and turn over to Deputy Mitchell.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. I'm certainly glad to be here today. My name is Senior Deputy Clint Mitchell. I've been a school resource officer for the Harford County Sheriff's Office for the past 22 years. It's a pleasure to be here today to testify in support of HB 157. the School Safety and Enhancement Act of 2024. I've held positions at Seamount Wright High School, Joppatown High School, and currently assigned to Patterson Mill Middle High at the middle school. I've had a wonderful opportunity to interact with students of all races, cultures, genders, and backgrounds. My favorites being those with special needs. My reason for testifying here today is to bring clarification to the realistic role of the SRO in our Maryland schools and how he or she overwhelmingly has a positive impact on our students with minimal negative interaction. Many have this perception that SROs' jobs consist of arresting students all day long or making referrals to juvenile services. I can honestly say after 22 years of walking the halls, this cannot be further from the truth. I'll even testify today that 95% of my job has been the proactive safety and security of the students and staff and an unmeasurable amount of counseling and relationship building. These relationships and opportunities allow SROs to steer students and parents in the right direction when it comes to decision-making during conflicts and other needs. The SRO does not, and I want to make this perfectly clear because this is a big misconception, the SRO does not take the place of the school counselor, the psychologist, or the administrator at all, but only adds a branch on the tree of resource that's needed in every community, no matter the makeup. I'm very passionate, as you can tell, when it comes to the nurturing of students I interact with, and I show the same passion when I train all the new SROs to the position. I understand not only our mission of safety, but obligation as part of the nurturing process for productive young members of all communities. My wish is that every concerned member could walk the halls with me just one day, to see how positive and well-trained SRO can have a meaningful impact on the school community. I'd like to quickly share just two out of hundreds of experiences that I've had over 22 years.
Testimony, thank you.
Yes, sir. First involves a student at Seamount Wright, and she was a good student, many teenagers trying to find themselves. Her mother used to come to me basically with problems that I helped her with. Long story short, she ended up being a school teacher in Harford County, and her husband is now a sheriff's deputy who's showed interest in Harford County Public Schools. As an SRO, I call that impact. The most important one I can tell you is of an autistic student by the name of Alex and Gwen. So it's most important, it involves an autistic student named Alex. So as a special needs student, I spoke with Alex nearly daily with either a fist bump or verbal greeting. He was small in stature and he had limited verbal interaction. So one day, Alex eloped from the school. Elopes means run away from the school, and we would bring him back on several occasions. On February the 18th, 2022, he eloped and ran towards a sedimentary pond and eventually jumped in the pond in freezing cold water and disappeared underneath. As he came up, as I pursued, I know that autistic students are attracted to water. I jumped in the water, brought him back, received the life-saving award. But the most important thing for that day was Alex being with us today. So those are some of the more accurate depictions of what we do in the halls. I wish you could walk the halls with us to see that. I'm going off script now. But I just wanted to be clear how passionate I am. And Deputy Mitchell's not an anomaly. Deputy Mitchell is one of hundreds of SROs in Maryland that impact our students every day. I give away bicycles. I give haircuts.
Thank you, Deputy Sheriff. Thank you very much for your passion. We can definitely feel it. We do have a question from Delegate McComas.
Real quick question. I don't know if you remember me, Officer. Okay. Anyway, Officer Mitchell, when I was given those scholarships and we were out back talking, it was very interesting to see how you interacted with the kids. And I mean, it was really a wonderful thing to see. I'll be honest with you. Kids love him. And I mean, I guess I'm kind of out of order here, but I actually was there. I got to see it. So congratulations, and you're real good. You're the best.
I believe in the program, man.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Delegate McComas, for sharing that testimony. Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Mitchell, for what you're doing. And I had a different question, but I'm just going to actually cancel that out, go back to that little story you were telling me, just so I have a better, and sounds like just a hero right there, but the story you're telling here explain how a situation like that unfolds for an SRO, or you certainly look physically capable. You look like you keep in pretty good shape. What happens? Walk us through an emergency situation like that, opposed to kind of the everyday, and how you jump into action. And I assume as the SRO, you are the one expected to immediately take action and something like that, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so recently over the past 5 years, the movement for SROs and all police officers have been to understand and recognize mentally ill folks and autistic and manic depressive and folks with problems, instead of running in and trying to solve the problem. The movement is to sit back now and observe the person, to actually see the person's, if the person is mentally ill, and see the person's problem, past whatever it was to get us there. And we as SROs, we deal with these kids every day. We deal with special needs. Those are my favorite kids. So you have to know, being the SRO, you have to know all your kids. I guarantee you, if you went to Patterson Row right now, I could either name by first or last name 30% of that school. So that's I pride myself, and there's plenty. It's not just me; it's plenty more SROs. So kind of to answer your question, the expertise, like we work hand in hand with psychologists, administrators, counselors, and it's their job. They usually hit it first. We're the ones who are like, okay, when they need like physical help to bring the kids back, or the kids that I talk to on the lunchroom table or in the hallways every day, they may have a better relationship with me, whether that be special needs or kids that are not special needs. So where it comes into play with us is that a kid may come to us and tell us a problem, when they might not feel comfortable telling the principal the problem. Obviously, we take every incident we take to our principal, so they can handle it first if they can, and give them the resources they need, or if we can solve it, we solve it. But we don't wander schools and do things without letting the school know.
Yep. And so back to part of it is, in case of emergency, you are the one expected to react. And in this case, you did probably save the life.
That's
just so I know,
correct.
and that's okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and with Alex in particular, and all elopers, we're included in the plans. We're included. Hey, as soon as we get there, hey, or as soon as we get a new student, hey, Alex is known to elope, or Jennifer is known to elope. If we call for you or say a certain code, hey, come help us, because I can tell you, Alex's handler would have never caught Alex. I mean, I'm not saying anything about the elderly people, but she happened to be elderly.
And if I may, very briefly, because the deputy is very, very modest. This kid was going to die. This child ran from the school, and as most autistic children do, they run towards water. And this kid ran into freezing cold water in a sediment pond. And if Deputy Mitchell was not there to gather him, he would have died. And it's freezing cold water. He's in full gear, full uniform, disregarding his own well-being for the sake of another. And he saved a life that day. He's been awarded for it, recognized for it, and I'm very grateful here to tell a story, but he's a hero, and I'm grateful for him.
We have a question from Delegate Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Certainly, your story is of heroism is laudable, and I applaud you, and I know that young person's family is so thankful for you. I had a question about data and a statement that was made by the Maryland Center for School Safety about a lack of data back in 2022 to determine whether or not the SRO system is effective based on just weighing out an aggregate of data. And I think the National SRO Association agreed that there was not a mass of data that could allow anyone to make that determination. I'm trying to figure out if that has changed since 2022, and if so, what kind of data is out there now, and does that support the price tag on the appropriation?
So what's not captured in the data is,
well, I get that. I acknowledge what you have accomplished, what you have done for that family, what you have done for that school.
Yes.
I'm not trying to cut away at what you have done and what you provide for that community. I'm simply talking about where is there an aggregate of data from across the state, across the country that allows someone to, objectively determine if the SRO system is effective to warrant this $20 million appropriation?
So I imagine data is being kept. I know 5 years ago, they had us do racial arrest data. In Harford County, I can only speak of, we just don't arrest a lot of kids. We arrest kids mainly based on parental. A lot of times it's parental. If you take 10 times, I guarantee you 8 times it's going to be parental requests, not by the deputy's decision. But it would, for me, I'm hearing data, but what types of data are we talking about? Are we talking about arrest data or counseling data, or what data are we talking?
That's what I'm asking you. Is there data, an aggregate of?
Oh, yes. So I know our agency keeps data. We keep what's called a statistics sheet on our monthly interaction with kids, whether that be arrest, which rarely happens, on to counseling, student counseling, or how many sporting events you keep. Ours is about 30, is about category of 30. So I guess if you went to Harford County Sheriff's Office and asked for the school policing data, they would definitely have data for our county. Now, I can't speak for Cecil or Montgomery or anything like that, but we're pretty much across the board the same. Everybody's trained the same, and everybody takes the same model from neighboring counties and neighboring states. So I would say yes, if you went to any police agency and said, hey, give me your SRO data, any kind of data you wanted about what those SROs are doing in that school, they would be able to present it. Yes, sir.
And Deli, just follow up by a little bit. So there is some statewide data, but the problem with the data, again, only 20% of Maryland public schools have a full-time SRO. So, and why this is anecdotal, to your point, there's a lack of data. What it appears to me, based upon reviewing the data, is that we triage largely where we put the SROs. So SROs in many cases are put in the schools with some of the most troubled situations, right? So you're going to see some skews there, but in Harford County, we're pretty equitable where we have the school, where we have the SROs, and we don't see, from the data I've seen, any particular spikes based upon location, geography, demographics. Because we have it's a pretty diverse county. So what we've seen, according to that, doesn't, but again, to your biggest point, is there needs to be more data. But I would say boots on the ground, there's been a really positive impact because of folks like Deputy Mitchell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is Delegate Grice.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have a question based on a letter from DBM, and I'm certainly don't want to debate you on the issue, but I'd like to challenge our witnesses because the work that we do is critically important. It says in this letter here that the Safe Schools Grant Program, there's an annual appropriation of $10 million currently. And only about $4 to $5 million is actually being spent out of this program. And for me, I don't know that it makes sense to expand a program that we're not fully taking advantage of currently. So are you, and it might be because of the scope of this program might be too narrow. Are you guys willing to amend this bill to actually address the scope of the program and not necessarily the funding?
Sure. So like Harford County receives about $350,000 a year from this appropriation, which is they're maxed out on. So part of it is the school systems who are going after this revenue. If we were to increase the revenue, they would have a more opportunity to get more dollars. However, to your point and to the letters from the administration, their point is well made that one of the reasons all the money is not being used is because of the scope. So if the committee decided that we want to revamp this bill, remove the increase in appropriation and just broaden the scope of the bill to allow more people to have access to these dollars, that may be a nice substitute from increasing the appropriation, especially in this climate. And so the point by the administration is well made, and I would be supportive of changing the bill to do that.
Delegate McComas.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask, Officer Mitchell, I sort of got the impression that you basically, by you being there and so personable, you have a public relations aspect to your job that basically helps kids realize that police are your friends, not your enemy. And I wish you could maybe explain that, since you've been doing this for a long time.
Every officer can't be an SRO. You know, if you come with those tools, the personalities, and we basically, we screen them. We screen guys. This guy would probably be good. That guy is probably more of a road oriented or patrol oriented. And yes, so that's one. And the other one is, can you do the job? And then there's also a probationary period where we give the SRO, you know, to see whether he can actually do the job. And then actually our bosses in Hartford County, they take input from the principals. Hey, how's this guy doing? How's this gal doing? They take input, and if it's not a good fit, it just doesn't work. I've seen huge improvements over the last 5 to 10 years, really, on getting the right folks into our schools. I think it's moving in the right direction. To elaborate a little bit on what you were talking about, some of the very quickly, some of the programs, like I did a bike giveaway at Joppatown. And now I'm which consisted of me at halftime, like giving away bicycles to kids who, it's basically to break down the barrier of kids being afraid of police officers. So I grab elementary school kids out of the stands. I paid for it with my own money the first year. And then we got a grant the next year. And in the next 2 weeks, I'll be giving away eight more bicycles to Aberdeen, Edgewood, Joppatown, and Patterson Mill High School. And there's plenty more money left in the program, so I'll be experimenting on different programs for that. That's just one of the things, one of the ways, along with, you know, I'm giving kids haircuts, I've paid for proms, I've paid for homecomings, I've paid for senior trips. And I know that is not a requirement, but it's just something, once you start, you know, getting into your schools, you start loving your kids and you start hearing their stories, and you become more of a, you know, an advocate or a resource for kids.
Great. Thank you very much, Deputy Sheriff, for your testimony, and thank you to the bill sponsor for presenting the bill. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 157. And that also concludes the House bill hearing for today. On behalf of Appropriations Committee Chairman Ben Barnes, thank you very much and have a great evening.